laid out room. The most likely time that people are going to give referrals is 6 months after they move in. Were you aware of that? Studies say that 6 months after they move in is the most likely time people are giving referrals. So my question to you is, have you adjusted your follow-up program to follow them that far post-closing? Okay, it's fascinating, and a lot of people don't do that. Well, why is that? It's just because they've lived in the home. So now they've had a chance to believe all of the things that we've told them that they would have when they get into this home.
Is that true just for new construction, or is that true for all sales?
The study was new construction. But I would guess that that also carries over to existing homes as well, because again, it's all about lifestyle and how you use it. Financing. Funny, the financing guy's going to talk about financing. A big part of the buy decision is also financing, okay? So another question. Prize money, guys, so raise your hand. How much of the buy decision is financing? Can somebody guess? Give me a guess. You cannot work for my company, do not raise your hand. Third, right. 30% of the buy decision today is financing. Now, what did I tell you before about lifestyle? How much was lifestyle? 1/3. 1/3 of the, now this is not me, I'm not making this up. The study was called Houses Are for People. Financing, I said 1/3 is financing, 1/3 is lifestyle, 1/3 is the home. So are you adjusting your sales patterns and what you're doing out there to address this issue? Buyer profile provides you a lot of insight on the financing side. I see a lot of promotions, hey, closing costs, this, that, the other thing. But your promotions need to speak to who the audience is. And we'll get into that a little bit further on some examples. But understanding leverage, this is a big one. I talk to salespeople all the time. They say, we have great financing. You know, the market's 5% and our rate's 4.5%. It's great. And I said, well, what does that mean? I'm a buyer, what does it mean? Well, it means you get lower payments. Well, what does it mean? Few of them will say, well, it's $70 more a month. Okay, and I said, well, understanding leverage, I said, let me put it to you this way. You're offering me a 4.5% interest rate on a $300,000 home, right? Market's at 5%. That payment differential is like you cutting the price of this home $15,000. I'm buying your $300,000 home for a $285,000 payment. Is that more meaningful maybe to the buyer? Oh, by the way, if I'm a young family, now I have $15,000 more in upgrades for me to deck out my home. If I'm an empty nester, and we'll get into this, empty nesters, one of their main concerns is long-term operating cost. So if you're energy efficient and you have financing, does that change how you talk to them about how they use the home? Absolutely. It's a big, big difference. And that'll also help you with closings as well. You know, one of the biggest fears and obstacles people have to purchasing a home is financing. And so what we try to do is, because we understand demographics, is really address this and give them a reason to buy. People buy emotionally and justify logically when it comes to real estate. And also, you know, you and your lender really need to incorporate financing into your sales process. It is absolutely critical that you do in this day and age, especially with a large population of young buyers who are very concerned, you know, first-time buyers buying property and not understanding financing out there. Follow-up. I'm sorry I missed my segue on this, but follow-up. Follow-up is probably the biggest hole I see in organizations in the sales process. And it's more so that not that people don't want to follow up, they don't have a structure, they're not consistent. So let me give you some examples out here about why do we follow up. We follow up, sorry, I'm going to move away from the podium here. We follow up why? For prospective buyers, why are we following up? We're following up because we want them to be back, right? We want more face-to-face interaction. Face-to-face interaction is the best type of human interaction you can have in the sales process. We want them to come back. Do we have a longer sales cycle today? Right? You guys should all be nodding. We have a longer sales cycle. It's 6, it's 9, it's 12 months. If somebody has got in their car today, hopped in their car, drove through the rain, put down their iPad which says China is folding tomorrow, right? The world is collapsing, and they're standing in front of you just looking, and I borrowed that from Jeff Shore. That's a real buyer. They may not be buying today, but they're going to be buying. So go back to what I said about providing information, getting to know them. We have a longer sales cycle, so your follow-up needs to adjust for that as well. You need to vary your type of communication. Once you've had face-to-face with people, don't go back to embedded electronic communication. Okay? Lowest form of communication is written, electronic. Then about 4 times as valuable is phone, 6 times as valuable is face-to-face. Vary the types of communication that you have. Make it in a linear path. You know, 3 days I follow up, 5 days my lender follows up, thank you, gift card, compare the value, whatever it may be, but vary the communication. Also make sure that your timeline is a minimum of 6 months. Actually, in this market, I would go out to 9 months, okay? Don't make it impersonal. Take the time, because when they make their buy decision, they're going to gravitate to whom? Those people that best understand their needs and where they see the value. And if you're out there providing that information, you'll have a lot of success with that. Again, as I said, most referrals come after 6 months, so have a follow-up program for the homes that you sell, okay? So you can follow up. And finally, pay attention to the life cycle. I speak to a lot of builders who've been building a long time, and they can tell me about every neighborhood they built in. And what I want you just to be conscious of is this. An entry-level buyer in 5 to 7 years becomes a young family. Young family becomes a family like mine with older kids, right? Our housing need is different. I need a basement, so they go away. And then we have empty, I love them, they're just a pain. And then we have, I'm just the money, right? I'm just the cash machine at home. Anyway, and then the final thing is they become empty nesters. So for those of you in sales, if you've been doing this a while, you have a database full of people that are in lifestyle transition. The properties that you're selling may fit that new lifestyle. Why aren't you marketing them? For the builders, they have a database of former owners. You don't go back to the ones that are really mad at you. You go back to the ones that are happy and talk to them about your new properties. These are things that I'm seeing, and it's really the simplest, the cheapest, the most cost-effective way to create sales, and it's very powerful, and I see people hit and miss on this all the time. And again, the main thing is it's just being consistent. You have to be consistent and regular in the follow-up. Okay, well, let's talk about positive signs. You know, there's a lot of information out there in the market. Many of you probably between the Wall Street Journal and CNBC and Bloomberg and everything else out there, you're hearing one day, fabulous. You're hearing next day, it's horrible. It feels very erratic in the market, doesn't it? All of a sudden, there's a lot of buyers, and all of a sudden, there's no buyers, and it's up and down. I see it in my numbers because I'm just new construction. Okay, but there are some positive signs out there. Number one, and what I mean by this is home lending. Lenders are still lending out there. Go back to my traffic jam sign, okay? The credit process is slower. Where we blow people up is where we don't correctly set the expectation of the process they need to go through, okay? You need to have a job, and you need to pay your bills, and you need to have a social security number. Let's start there, okay? I won't even go there. We just see some, still today, I mean, you know, I have a debit card. Can I use it as my down payment? Where'd the money come? You know, my uncle in Korea, do you have a tax ID? No, okay? You know, you showed $80,000 in loss in your tax return. They don't understand it. But I mean, part of it is just explaining the process. If you set expectation correctly about what people need to go through, they will gladly go through it. Also, 90% of buyers, the NAHB had a study that they just published. 90% of buyers believe it is a good time to buy. However, they lack confidence. So go back to all the other things that I talked about. Information, understanding your buyer, dialogue, providing information, longer sales cycle. You can provide confidence. I'm not saying that you have to convince people, but a lot of times when you're dealing with analytics, do we have analytics in this market? Oh yeah, they're painful, right? They want to book a data. You don't have to show them the data to make the answer. Just show them the data, provide them the information. A lot of times they'll come to their own conclusions on that.